And we are live on September 26th with the Amateur Analysts Weekly AA Meeting Sports Podcast. We have one substitution in today. Graham is joining us again, this time in place of Kyle. Graham, you want to say hi to everybody?
Hey, guys. I know this week I'm not taking over for Sirio, so I'm not going to say really anything about Notre Dame, but in the spirit of Kyle being here, I'm going to try to work the Orlando Magic into multiple talking points tonight.
It's a brave move without any NBA talk. I like it. Sirio?
I'm just here for the Trump talk. I will be drinking Corona. Let's make America great again.
And Doobie?
Serial looks like he's live streaming a Trump rally right now.
USA.
I'm wearing a fedora for no apparent reason. Let's get this started.
Just put it out there, I'm drinking some sweet tea, lemonade, vodka in tribute to Arnold Palmer, who passed away, one of the greatest golfers of all time. Had to put that in there.
Golf?
All right, so golf? Yes, golf.
I thought he was a basketball player.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
I'm drinking Mick Ultra in honor of
losing weight.
Lance Armstrong, one of the greatest cyclists of our generation.
All right, we're going to get into the sports now with start off with a little MLB Wild Card predictions for both leagues. Graham, you want to start us off with NL Wild Card?
Sure. So looking at the last 7 games of the season, I've got the Giants and the Cardinals taking the wild card spots for the NL. What really helps them out over the Mets is both teams finish out at home for the last series that they play. The Mets really are working on Bartolo Colon, and that's their only pitcher that they've got that can throw more than 5 innings. I just don't think they're going to be able to last towards the end of the another run right here.
Sirio, do you agree?
Have to agree with that. Those were the 2 ones that I was going to pick. The Giants, this is an even numbered year, so they are automatically guaranteed to win it all. And I think that the experience that the Cardinals have will just push them through. They know how to get it done. No doubt at all about those 2 teams for me.
Doobie, do you have anything to change?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go Mets and Giants. I think that the fact that they have pushed to this point and they have looked the best of those 3 teams over the past 10 games, I think the Mets will get in there. And I actually think that game will be in New York. And then, like Sirio said, the Giants, just because there's no way they're not getting in on an even-numbered year. That being said, I think it will be really interesting. I know 4.5 games is a very, very large margin. But given the tragedy that occurred, the Marlins are still within a reaching distance. They're playing the Mets tonight, I believe. And, it would be interesting to see if that could galvanize them to the point of making a run to get in there. And if they did get in, I really don't know if there's any way you could count them out going through the playoffs, because that type of motivational factor might be something that could push them over the edge.
All right, moving right along to the AL. Graham, who do you have making it?
So for the AL, I've got Toronto and Detroit. The Orioles have just looked absolutely awful over the last week. I've personally been able to see that firsthand. And the Orioles finish out the last series in New York against the Yankees. You can bet the Yankees and their young team would love nothing more than to spoil the Orioles making a playoff trip again. Toronto will face a Red Sox team that's likely going to be resting its players towards the end of the season. They need 2 more games to clinch the division. So I think all in all, it's going to end up being Toronto and Detroit that show up for the wild card game.
Sirio, who you got?
Yep, I'm just going to agree with Graham on this entire podcast, I guess. I think that the offense alone can carry Toronto into the postseason. We all know about the big bats that they have, and then Baltimore kind of has the combination of the deep ball and also Zach Britton, who is now 45 out of 45 or 46 out of 46 on save attempts, pretty much making it an 8-inning game for the other team. I think that.
So you disagree with Graham?
Who did Graham have? Toronto and Baltimore.
He had Toronto and Detroit.
Okay, disagree. Yay me, paying attention. Yeah, So continuing, I think that, making it an 8-inning game versus a 9-inning game down these last few games is going to be the difference maker, and they sneak in. Game will be in Toronto.
All right, Doobie.
I'm going to go Toronto and Baltimore. I think Baltimore is the most impressive team in the MLB. The fact that they're even in this conversation right now, their starting rotation is atrocious. Their bullpen is decent. Their first four in their batting order is pretty decent, but other than that, I don't know how they're possibly in this race right now. That being said, I think they're going to sneak in over the Tigers, mainly because I watched the Tigers-Twins series a little bit, and the Tigers looked like absolute dog shit in a few of those games, and that has made me think that they can't get in the playoffs. So I'm going to go with Toronto and Baltimore, with Toronto winning that game by about 8 or 9 runs.
All right. Anything more to add on the MLB playoff picture before we move on out of the MLB? We'll get a much more detailed talk of that, the playoffs, and all of the awards.
I do want to bring one thing up about the MLB. Why don't we just go through our MVP picks? I've heard that Palmer still thinks that Mike Trout should be in the conversation.
I have no numbers to back this up, and Doobie said he was going to call me out on this anyway, knowing I would not have anything to back myself up on. I've been off of the baseball this year a little bit, haven't watched it nearly as much. I do know that Mike Trout's the best player in baseball, and he's only got one MVP to show for 4 seasons of being the best player in baseball, so it frustrates me that he's on such an awful team and will not even get any consideration.
While that is true, I think the gap has closed on Mike Trout being the clear-cut best player in baseball. I think that Mookie Betts is making that a conversation. First of all, if he doesn't win the MVP, it's an absolute travesty, in my opinion. I know some people are going to make an argument for Jose Altuve, but Mookie Betts is, other than batting average, is as good as him in every single category. And that's absolutely incredible to me, with all the power on that lineup, that he is still putting up the stolen base numbers that he is. The only person who I could see getting it, and there being a non-conversation, like where I would understand it even slightly, would be David Ortiz, almost as a legacy type award. I don't think he will win it, and I don't think he deserves to.
Why don't you just go through all the candidates? I'm just kidding. I want to piggyback onto that. I agree 100%. I think Mookie Betts is the clear-cut guy, no doubt about it. He's been batting leadoff, batting cleanup behind David Ortiz, batting third. He's been all over the place, crushing the ball, stealing bases, and even what he's doing on defense is just unparalleled this season. So if he doesn't win, then I would put David Ortiz.
Syria, you could say you really trumped me there.
To add on to Siria's point, I would agree with Mookie Betts needing to be the AL MVP. The one thing that I'll point out is if you look at wins over replacement, he is second in MLB in wins over replacement, and it's not all tied to offense, where Mike Trout's got 10.3 wins and 9.66 of that being in offense. Mookie Betts has 6 on offense and 2 on defense. Anybody else that's in the top 5 has under 1 as far as defense. So not only is he an impact player on the offensive side of the ball, but he's also keeping them in games on the defensive side of the ball.
Before we move on, let's just address this quickly. Does anyone actually think that wins above replacement is a statistic that should be acknowledged over the hard and true statistics? Because I have never thought that's something that should be the deciding factor, and it's always mentioned in the MVP race.
I don't think so at all. I think it's parallel to ESPN's total QBR. It's just a made-up number that no one really understands.
The FPI index and all this shit that we see, and everyone just takes it as oh, that's great, but it's just some nerd in a back room creating a statistic.
Yeah, you have to look at the season output. You can't say, at least in my opinion, that he's I feel like I could go out and just by swinging and striking out could have a 0 wins above replacement. I don't know what it means.
I agree.
That didn't make a whole lot of sense, Sirio, but I like.
Yeah,
which is proving my point. I don't think anyone
He's
understands.
just trying to tell you that he has 0 wins above his replacement. Like anybody's better than him. It's the same as in this podcast. Like when Graham comes on for Syria, Graham has like at least 6 WAR above Syria.
I like that.
All right. Any more MLB talk before we move on to the good stuff? I don't think that is a no. Anyone have anything they want to bring up in NFL? I said we talked about it a little bit, but we went a little longer on MLB. Is there anything anyone wants to specifically talk about?
Yeah, I would like to just bring up really quick. I think it's really interesting, these quarterbacks that really were expected to do absolutely nothing, doing really big things right now. While I am impressed with Wentz, I thought he was the best of the rookie quarterbacks to come out this year. I never expected him to do this fast and look as good as he does right now. I think the possibility for a crashing downfall is still there for him, but he's not even the one that surprised me the most. The fact that Simeon out in Denver literally whooped up on the Bengals yesterday, who I still believe have a great defense, and made them look like a second-rate team, is really impressive to me. This kid was a 7th-round pick out of Northwestern. Has Northwestern ever even put out anything other than a sportscaster? I can't believe the fact that he is playing this well and that he's making Denver look like a true Super Bowl contender, which I didn't even think they'd make the playoffs.
I agree 100%. I'm even going to go farther. Dak Prescott last night also looked insane. And then one more name, Sam Bradford in Minnesota. They're 3-0. I mean, I know he didn't start week 1, but he's been just amazing. I'm not going to give him all the credit because the defense has been really good, but the quarterback play across the board has been.
Would you guys say that Minnesota looks like the best team in the NFC?
Obviously their defense does, but I'd have to put some thought into it. They're the only undefeated team, right?
No, the Eagles.
Eagles?
Yeah, the Eagles.
That is nuts. And
Eagles might look more well-rounded than Minnesota does.
It's ridiculous. How is that possible?
And that's with Adrian Peterson down as well.
Yeah, but how is that possible? The Eagles look like any sort of. Well, I honestly, before the season started, thought the Eagles were the worst team in the NFL. It does not make. I still will hold true to my heart that the Eagles are going to crash and burn because I can't fathom any scenario. Like our bar is a Steelers bar, and I was everyone was coming in there expecting them to destroy the Eagles, and then the way that actually went, they looked like the best team in the NFL yesterday. And I can't fathom that that's actually true.
I mean, that game yesterday. I don't remember. I mean, is McNabb the last time they looked that good? Like the good McNabb years?
Has to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, they looked really good under Chip Kelly with Foles for a period of time.
Yeah.
When Nick Foles came out and threw like 6 touchdowns in a game. I mean, even Sanchez looked really good under Chip Kelly for a couple games there. But still. Right now, they look well-rounded. Their defense looks incredible. For me, though, I've got to go with the Vikings as the most sustainable because they've played the 2 best teams in the NFC, in my opinion. I think the Packers and the Panthers are the 2 best, and they've handled both of them.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look at the Eagles and who they played the first 2 weeks, now last night the Steelers win was definitely a big win for them to show some type of legitimacy. But against the Browns and the Bears, I mean, those aren't 2 world beaters and teams right there.
Right.
And if I'm going to bring something up, I think the best thing that I saw yesterday in football was actually Ty Montgomery taking a kickoff where he actually ran out of bounds, laid on the ground with a foot out of bounds, and touched the ball, causing the ball to be spotted at the 40-yard line because it counts as the ball hitting a player out of bounds and being an out-of-bounds kickoff.
Oh yeah, I read an article about that he just exploited the rules to get like a few extra yards.
No,
Awesome.
It was like 40 extra yards.
Oh really?
Yeah. It was
Ball was on the 3.
He touched the ball at the 3-yard line, but he laid out of bounds and grabbed the ball that was right on the hash mark.
Okay, I gotta watch it.
It's going to be interesting to see if players like try to pull that from now on and see if anyone puts that effort in, if it keeps kickers from going toward the corners as often.
Yeah.
All right. Any other NFL talk before moving on to college football? I'll take that as a no. We're going to get right into the good stuff then. Start out just some reactions from our picks. Doobie continues to absolutely dominate the college football picks, especially against the spread. He's batting over 600 on against the spread in college football, which is kind of absurd, and he should be making tons of money off this if he bet a little smarter. Graham, I know you didn't get any picks in, but if you have any reactions on just general spread stuff, let us know. But we'll let Doobie start us off on this one for just being way better than everybody.
What I will say is that I pick from my heart. I don't let anything get in my way. I just look at the team and I let them speak to me. I say, Arkansas, how will you perform this week? And they say, Texas A&M, don't you try to clown me here. And then I pick. And I think that's worked out pretty well for me so far. I'll continue to use the same strategy.
An example, considering you did pick Texas to cover and the Texas A&M to cover.
Yeah, that's why I said that. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I must have misunderstood you. I thought you were saying the opposite way around, but
no. What I will say about the pick specifically is that while I did pick Texas A&M, and this is kind of why I use that as an example, and I did say this a couple weeks ago. I think they're the second best team in the SEC. The fact that they covered that spread by the margin that they did was really, really impressive to me. So as far as those, I guess that's my favorite pick. I didn't have any individual picks that I was super pumped about. I didn't really pick anything that was fantastic. So I won't go any further than that. But Texas A&M really blew that spread out of the water.
Syrio, you got anything?
I just want to touch on a few things. One, USC blowing that game was just ridiculous. I just couldn't believe that. That's about the only opinion I have. The other thing was Florida State looked really good. I'm sure we'll have a separate discussion about that, so I'll wait for a couple minutes. And go Irish. Way to go. 21-point favorites. Go Irish.
For those of you not aware of the fact that Notre Dame lost to Duke after being favored by 21 points this weekend, which was just hilarious for most people except for Notre Dame fans who were probably very sad. Graham, any comments on any kind of spread betting?
Nothing as far as the spread goes, but I will say that UCF beat FIU, and UCF is actually headquartered in Orlando, which is where the Magic are from. And I definitely think the Magic are going to have a really good season this year.
Thank you, Kyle. We appreciate the Magic update.
I will say one more thing since you brought up Notre Dame. That was the worst pick I've ever made, I think. I actually, in addition to picking them to cover on our spreadsheet, I actually put actual dollars on that and lost my hard-earned money because I decided to cheer for Notre Dame for the first time in my life. I was also took a bad beat on Oklahoma State, who I bought up their points to 10, and they lost by 11. So thank you, Oklahoma State. I get that. I deserve that. That was Mason Rudolph laughing at me for all the times that I have talked about Mason Rudolph and how I was going to tattoo his name on my ass. He really got me from behind on that one.
I'll say one thing, and I can't believe that it just went through and no one touched on it. Go Gator. Really good performance by them. They looked like they were back. Gator Dynasty is here. We're all living in it. 11 in a row.
I will bring up, are we getting into discussion of the game specifically here, or should we wait?
Go ahead.
I had someone say to me, I was at the bar and someone said to me, you guys aren't going to beat the Gators this year. This is when they were up 21-0. And I looked at the television and I said, this team sucks. Not only will we beat them, we will destroy them. And I don't even think they're going to win this game. And that roar, literally a drive home a 10-minute drive home. It was 21-3, and then it was 20. What was it? 28-21. I could not believe, or 24-21. That was Ole Miss on steroids. I don't even know how they did that. That was really impressive because I'm sure you can talk on this, Palmer, but Josh Dobbs is not exactly the quarterback I would choose to lead my comeback, and he looked like Russell Wilson out there.
I just want to say one thing real quick. Pretty much what Perry's trying to say is make the Florida State rivalry great again.
I would just to piggyback on that, Doobie. Dobbs really didn't even look good in this game, and he didn't have to because the Florida secondary was so bad that he could literally just heave the ball as far as he could, and the wide receivers would have enough time to turn around, have a tea party, catch the ball, and run into the end zone. They were so wide open.
The wide receivers didn't look bad in the first half. I mean, the cornerbacks, the DBs looked amazing in the first half. And Appleby looked amazing.
You got to factor in 6 big drops by Tennessee wide receivers in that first half.
Yeah.
But still, what about the quarterback play? It was almost as if McElwain went in the locker room and was like, I want all of you to shit your pants right now and get back out there. We are playing way too well. This is unfortunate. I look like a chipmunk, and you guys, we don't need to be doing this. Get back out there and suck like we're supposed to. What? I don't think that was Butch Jones saying anything to his team. I think it was the other way around.
Oh, man. Dobbs did not look bad in the second half. As someone who is a proponent of saying that Josh Dobbs is an awful quarterback, he looked very capable in that second half, and it shocked me. I don't expect that to continue from him because it never does. He does that sometimes. But, yeah, that was just one of the most just absolute that was a worse second-half beatdown than I've ever seen by a team losing by that much. I've never seen that much of a beatdown. And that includes FSU beating up on Ole Miss in the second half of the first game this season. Yeah. This was way worse than that. I mean, Florida looked completely incompetent. They got one more touchdown late, but, man, it was bad.
I will say that the FSU game turned way quicker than this one did. I've never seen a game escalate that quickly, but then Ole Miss actually recovered a little bit and made a slight push towards the end there. There was a couple moments in that game where I was like, oh shit, Ole Miss actually could get back in this. That game was over. When they took the lead, that thing was so done and over. I can't even imagine. That was crazy.
All right,
one more thing I want to touch on. Sorry, just one more thing. Let's just all spend 1 or 2 sentences. LSU losing to Auburn, and then Les Miles getting fired. I couldn't believe it. LSU.
We're getting into all this, Syria.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I didn't see it on the agenda.
Before we get into that, I just want to say that Syria looks like Wilson from Home Improvement this entire time we've been on this. I feel like I can only see the top of his eyebrow whenever I look at his screen.
He doesn't. I don't think he's ever watched Home Improvement because he's just pointing the phone at his hat. Wilson was a big Trump supporter, just like me.
No, I just really like the hat.
Okay. Anyway, Syria didn't get the joke we made about him. Good. I like it though, Graham. Thinking on your feet. We're going to move into a little bit more on the betting stuff because there were some bad beats this weekend. The worst by far of which was the Stanford-UCLA game, which was a cover for UCLA easily. All they had to do was just not do anything. Yet they decided to fumble on the last play for Stanford to run it back in. The line was 9. Stanford won by 9. The line was Stanford 3.5, and it was a 3-point game before that fumble, and that was one of the worst betting beats. That's the worst one of the season that I know of.
I do want to address something on that. I think Josh Rosen had money on Stanford in that game. If anyone did not see, I watched that happen live, and when they went to shake hands, he had the largest smile on his face I've ever seen from a player and hugged David Shaw like he was his dad, and he had $100,000 on that game. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. He fumbles the ball, the other team runs it in the end zone, and he hops up, takes his helmet off, and looks like they just threw a Hail Mary to win the game. So I think that he may have had money on the opposing team there. Yeah, but that was about as bad a beat as I've ever seen happen. Like I was watching that live and I was like, oh, UCLA is going to cover at least. And then he fumbled that, and I was like, maybe he'll slide. And he didn't slide. He still went into the end zone just to make that cover happen.
The other one I had listed was the Bama-Kent State, where Kent State had a touchdown call back on a bit of a questionable call that would have put it right at 41 points with the spread being 44. Were there any other bad beats I'm missing?
Not that I remember.
Take that as
USF
a no.
got beat pretty bad.
Florida State did not beat them that bad. I wish we had beat them a lot worse than we did, to be honest with you.
It was bad until their final 2 drives.
It was bad until Trey Marshall got hurt and went out of the game, and then we couldn't stop them.
Yeah.
Should we get into that game?
Yeah, we might as well now. We need to at some point. So we'll get a little FSU talk here for the few homers that are going to watch this. Graham, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think the offense definitely looked a lot better than the past couple weeks. Dalvin Cook finally showed up and more than doubled his season rushing yards, which is absolutely amazing that he's in the top 10 now. I think on the offense, Florida State's going to be okay going forward. They've got to play it safe. I think Jimbo's really good at that. He's not going to put Francois in situations where he's going to have to throw it in situations where he's going to get picked off unless it's something that he scrambles out of the pocket and he's not really thinking. The defense, on the other hand, looked atrocious. I mean, after Florida State had pretty much put it away going into the end of the third quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter, USF actually started making plays to come back. And it wasn't, hey, the game's over, we're just giving garbage time touchdowns. They just weren't defending. And I don't know if the secondary for Florida State just doesn't understand what they're supposed to do, if they think they just stand around and people are going to go out of bounds on their own. But there's no tackling, and it's scary to think what's going to happen when we play, I don't want to say a real team, but a better team than USF.
Sirio.
I was actually not as down on the defense because, like I just said, they looked really good up until the final couple drives. And I'm not entirely sure how many reserves were playing, but I feel fairly confident saying that it was more than one. I feel like, especially in that heat, Jimbo just said, guys, let's just get out of here alive. That's about it.
I'd like to address that, what you just said. While I was obviously very disappointed in the defense, and I completely disagree with everything that Syria just said, the thing that disappointed me the most was that Jimbo, when we put up enough points where he felt it was safe that we were going to win, completely took his foot off the gas after he faced a team the week before that didn't take their foot off the gas and embarrassed him as a coach and a recruiter. And he, from the time we scored those 55 points, did not run a single play that wasn't a halfback dive up the middle. And the fact that he wouldn't at least try to get the ball down there to show people that we can be dominant is not. It doesn't bode well for me. The guy seems to play it safe far more than I'd like to. We needed to make a statement there, and I don't think we made a statement this week. Yeah, we put up 55 points, but I think that USF's defensive line looked worse than Charleston Southern's. I don't think that was any sort of premonition of how it's going to be going forward, except maybe we'll see a better Dalvin Cook. I was disappointed in the game overall. I was also disappointed, since we didn't have a podcast after Louisville. Jimbo's reaction to Louisville was atrocious, in my opinion. Just saying, it's just another game. We got to be a better. He said it's a game of inches. We lost by 43 points. How many fucking inches is that, Jimbo? How many inches is that? And then this week, when we lose to USF, I'm not happy either, or when we beat USF, then he freaks out in the press conference and is saying we don't have heart and we don't have all these things. At least we fucking won. What's going on? Like, did this guy mix up his weeks? I'm not feeling great going forward. I wasn't feeling great going into that USF game. USF played worse than I expected them to. But we're not going to beat UNC if we play the exact same game that we played this past week. We are not going to do it because they will put up 55 points on us. And then Miami, that's even scarier.
So I'm going to address a little bit of Sirio and Doobie there. Sirio, we played all of our starters that weren't injured. Trey Marshall went out, which is why Westbrook came on so much. Matthew Thomas got hurt, which is why I saw linebacker backups, and Christmas got hurt, which is why.
So you have Nate Andrews in there. Do you have Josh Sweat probably on a snap count?
So maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that like Jimbo put backups in instead of the players that could play. We had injuries, is why we had backups in.
Yes.
Okay. And
I also think that, and I mean, really what I was saying was I think in the fourth quarter we had our starters playing. It's not like he just had them sit on the pine and, just call the game off. I think it was like first down starters off and then mix them back on in the second and third. I don't think they were playing every single down. I'll have to go back and look, but I do know, especially on the defensive line, I saw our boy Shanks a couple times. And I'm sure
Sirio is right about that. We did have some reserves in the game. I'm just speaking. I think that speaks even more to my point that Jimbo wasn't going for that.
I think that's a hindsight pick. You don't know how hot it is on that field. It has to be over 100. Probably.
I know how hot it was. We were there. It was hot as shit. If you want to play college football, be able to handle heat. You play in Tallahassee, Florida. That's not an excuse.
Okay, so if we had a guy pull a hamstring and get injured, would you have been like, oh, yeah, great decision, leaving everyone in?
That game wasn't out of hand. Yeah, it wasn't like Charleston Southern.
I'm just saying in general, in the fourth quarter. I would rather beat USF by 30 than beat them by 45 and have two guys
we beat them by
miss
20.
a week. Sorry, by 20.
We're going to move on from that a little bit. Doobie, I want to address your point about Jimbo on the play calling. Do you think he just doesn't trust Francois at all?
Well, my only defense for Jimbo would be that Francois looked like shit passing. He was awful. He was putting balls at people's feet all day. I'm not even saying he needed to throw the ball, but Louisville ran up the score on us because they just kept running the ball outside. The only major gains we had was when Patrick was breaking tackles or when Francois just decided to take it up the middle. We didn't run any read option. We didn't run anything outside. It was just dive, 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 dive. And that's not what I wanted to see. Like, you don't even need to throw the ball, but at least throw something inventive in there to try to score some points.
Fair enough. All right, we're going to move on from FSU, get moving down our agenda here. Next thing we're going to talk about is every single year it happens. It's always lots of fun for some people, and other teams hate it. It's the coaching carousel because LSU has fired Les Miles. They did it yesterday. Should have been done 10 months ago, but they finally got to it. Get you all's initial thoughts on the firing as well as any kind of thoughts on who they pursue and where else you think the coaching carousel is going to go. Graham, start us off.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it's about 10 months too late. They should have done it last year. I think now this go around, they know they're not going to get Jimbo Fisher. I think it'd be idiotic really to think that Jimbo Fisher would leave with the spot that he's in right now. I still think Les Miles is going to continue coaching. I think he's going to be a really good coach, but not in the SEC. I really see him as going to the Big 12 or the Pac. Just some potential fits that I see for him. I think USC or Oregon could be a good fit. I think if something opens up in the Big 12, he would be a good fit there too, just the way his offense plays, as long as the clock is not an issue. As far as people that could take over the spot at LSU, I think everybody's going to throw out Tom Herman, and I think if Houston doesn't join the Big 12, he's definitely going to look at jumping ship to move to a program that he can actually build and have real national title aspirations. I think the dark horse for this job at LSU is going to be Lane Kiffin. Alabama actually hiring Sarkisian signals that Kiffin's going to move on and take a head coach job. Don't know if it would be somewhere as close as LSU, but I definitely don't think you rule him out. He's definitely going to give you the offense that you want as an LSU fan, as what you're used to in the past. If you look at everything else, without having to repeat probably what everybody else is going to say, I think Lane Kiffin's going to be someone else to take a look at.
Sirio.
I'm going to go a little bit different. I think that the reason why Les Miles was kept on during last season, and especially into the offseason, was because of the recruits. That would just be a dumpster fire. They finished third in the nation in recruiting class. I'm using 24/7 Sports to quote that. And I think that you fire a guy in the offseason, all these recruits start dropping out, going to Alabama, going to even Ole Miss that finished fifth, all over the place. I think they just accepted it, and then they were waiting for a good reason to fire him and use this game to gain backing from all the fans. And
yeah, but why would they do that if they still have a number 4 class for 2017? I mean, they're going to lose a lot of those recruits that should be coming in for next year by doing this.
Yeah, they probably will. But if they fire, or they have, this is what, week 4, so they still have 8 more weeks. If they bring in a new guy and they do really well and they try to rebrand themselves, it could even turn into a positive.
Yeah, you usually see a bit of a boon in recruiting, honestly, when a new coach is hired at a big name school like that. It's pretty common to see like a 10 to 12 month boost in recruiting. So I think that definitely was the thought process there.
I actually have a completely different theory on it. I think that what Sirio said does play a certain role into it, but I actually think that the top candidate that LSU has on their radar is Ed Orgeron. I think they think that he is a really good coach, and I think they saw what he did with USC when Kiffin got fired and galvanized that team. And I think that they waited because they said, if Les can't get it done in the first 4 games next year, let's get rid of him and use this as an audition for Orgeron because we like him. And if we just hire this guy in the offseason, he goes out and sucks, then we're screwed. But if we get to see him for a full 8 games, what he can do, and at the same time, he might be able to keep a lot of those recruits because he's going to say, I know Les is gone, but I am here for Les. I recruited you as well. I think Ed Orgeron is the whole key to this, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the guy who ends up getting the job. He's a big name. Everyone knows what happened in that USC situation. Players love that guy. He's had SEC experience. I think he played at LSU. I think he's the guy I would hire if I was LSU. I mean, as long as he can go out and do this. I think LSU's in the perfect situation right now. If they bomb, Orgeron's out of town. If they do great, they've got their next coach.
It's fair.
Do you think he would come on a 1 or an 8-game trial?
Well, he's the interim head coach. He already is.
Head coach.
But now, I'm saying I would expect – I don't think it'd be a very wise decision for him to say, I'm only taking these 8 games. Here's my signature.
What
I don't think coaches do that.
He's already on the staff. He's a coach, and he's now the interim head coach.
How long is his contract?
He's the defensive coordinator.
No, you're right, Sarah. His contract is only for half the year this year. Then after that, they're just kind of on their own.
He's already under contract as a coach, and they named him interim. I don't know what kind of money comes with that extra, but he is the interim head coach till the end of the year, no matter what. Unless he quit. I mean,
let's put it this way: if Les Miles wasn't fired, Ed Orgeron would still be on the coaching staff at LSU.
Yeah,
he was already.
I get that.
Okay. Also, he was not their DC. He's their DL coach. Aranda is their DC, who I hope Florida State steals away.
But what I'm saying is, do you think he's going to take on the interim head coaching responsibilities for the same contract? Or do you think that he's going to want to go in and say, if I take on these new responsibilities, I want
He already took the interim. He already took the interim.
I don't know what the contract issues there are. I'm sure he makes more money for doing it. I'm sure that was already negotiated, though, because he's already officially is. So if he was going to, he did. And if he's not, he didn't, because it's already done at this point.
He is the interim coach. Yeah. And if he gets a head coaching job, it's not like he's going to have that same DL line coach salary. They're going to bump him way up.
That's what I'm saying, but I think it already happened just because we haven't seen anything about it. I think that he's already been.
I would be interested to see what kind of contract things come up there because they obviously give him a raise or something to do this. I mean, there's got to be some kind of contractual issue. It'd be curious to see what they did, but we need to get moving on. I am surprised no one, unless I missed it, mentioned Tom Herman as possible replacement at LSU. That's been one of the big names floating around.
Graham did. My thing with Tom Herman is why, if I'm Tom Herman, I'm not leaving that Houston program.
Not if they make the Big 12.
Yeah.
Even if they don't right now, like LSU's a great job, but that guy can go, if he makes the playoff this year, Houston can make the playoff every year. Once you get your name in the hat, he's going to have the ability. The only thing that will be a downfall for him going forward is the fact that he won't be able to get scheduling, because no one's going to schedule him out of conference. That being said, Houston's a great recruiting ground. They've got great facilities. I know there's the whole thing of you should jump ship before things go too far for you, but Chris Peterson hung on, and we all said, Chris, why didn't you jump ship? And then he finally jumped ship, and look what he's doing now. And he's made Washington a contender. And so I think Tom Herman should stay put. Don't mess with the pressure at LSU. Stay at that program, and then once you prove you got 5 good years in you, then move to somewhere like Alabama when Nick Saban retires.
We can agree on one thing. There's a man out there that needs to make LSU great again.
All right. We're going to move on to Heisman's. We're going to go just 3 guys on your list. Brief explanation for why. Graham, go ahead.
For the first 3 picks, I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. I think he's just that good. And then I think if you're looking at 4 and 5, it's going to be McCaffrey. He didn't have that great of a game this past week against UCLA, but they still won. So the way that it works, he's still going to be part of the conversation. And then the last person that I've got is Dalvin Cook. Nobody else is really impressed that much that deserves to be, hey, this is 1, 2, and 3. You can't really argue that. I mentioned it earlier. Dalvin Cook essentially doubled his rushing yards for the entire year in 1 game and is now the number 8 leader in rushing for all of college football. So if he can do that in 1 game, I think it shows just how wide open this race is outside of Lamar Jackson. And if he can just continue pace and be, the majority of what he was last year, I think he's easily coming in at number 2 for the Heisman race.
Is there anyone that doesn't think Lamar Jackson is the front runner?
I don't think it.
I'll address that when it gets to me. But
okay, so I'm just going to skip over Lamar Jackson then, and I'll let you go next. For me, I think Jabril Peppers has been amazing, bringing that Michigan team to where they are now. I mean, he's the face of that franchise, if you want to call it that. Second, Greg Ward Jr., and this is just kind of extending it, which is unfair, extending it back to last season. But again, it's Houston that we're talking about, and he has a chance to do really good things. So I have him for sure on my radar. And last is McCaffrey. Same thing that Graham said, just an all-around guy. He's been doing it every single week this season. But yeah, let's Doobie, go ahead and talk about Jackson. And I'm kind of curious.
Well, right now Jackson is the number 1 guy on my list. Absolutely, I said it 2 weeks ago. Florida State, Louisville. Whoever wins that game, you're going to have your front runner for the Heisman for the time being. But when you're at a program like Louisville,
wait, hold on. Sorry. Is it Francois or Cook that you're referring to?
I said both. I said, whoever had the best game for FSU,
okay.
and then Lamar Jackson.
Gotcha.
But Lamar Jackson clearly had the best game, and right now he should be the front runner. He deserves that. That being said, he's at a boom and bust program. If Louisville loses a couple games, I don't think he's going to win the Heisman, no matter how ridiculous his statistics are. The same with a guy like, even more so, a guy like Greg Ward. These guys, they are entirely dependent on how much their program wins. I'll get into this more, but I personally don't see Louisville as that team that's going to win out. So my number 2 guy, J.T. Barrett, have believed and still believe he will win the Heisman Trophy. He is on a squad where he's going to do everything. Urban Meyer's a genius. He's the devil, but he's a genius. And number 3, I'm going to go back to the same strategy I used with FSU, Deshaun Watson. If he beats Lamar Jackson, he is the leading Heisman Trophy candidate. That's as clear as it is. The difference with Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson is Deshaun Watson doesn't need to go undefeated in order to win the Heisman. Deshaun Watson needs to have a good season, and he can win that Heisman. Lamar Jackson needs to win this game to win the Heisman. So I think by next week, we're talking about Deshaun Watson as the leading Heisman Trophy candidate.
Ohio State's 2, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I like what you said about JT Barrett. I just want to ask you one question, and then I guess anyone else who wants to answer. When Houston and Louisville square off, and let's say that they're both still undefeated at that time being, I think that's a game that people are going to use to say, this is why that player, whichever quarterback wins.
If they're undefeated, both of those teams, I completely agree. Whichever quarterback wins that game has a very good shot at winning the Heisman.
But
Greg Ward would be tougher than Lamar Jackson because he's not putting up the numbers that Lamar Jackson is.
Agreed.
Yeah,
I mean, we all have him as our front runner. Yeah.
Lamar Jackson could lose a game and still be considered the favorite to win the Heisman.
I don't think that's true.
I definitely do. Just looking at the schedule that they play.
If he one game, yes, not two.
Yeah, one game,
not two.
No, Houston. Greg can't afford to lose one game.
He has to
if he
go
loses one, he's done.
Did Geno Smith win when he was going off?
No.
Who won that year?
I couldn't tell you who won exactly. I think that was Mark Ingram, but I can't be sure about that.
That was the most comparable thing in the past that I have to relate to Lamar Jackson. Is a guy, similar situation on a boom or bust team that you were talking about.
Lamar Jackson's in a Big 5 conference.
Fair. Yeah, that's true.
I disagree. I think the most comparable thing was Kenny Hill at Texas A&M. I mean, like we're still only 4 weeks. Yeah, we're still only 4 weeks into the season. Everyone's so high on Lamar Jackson. And what I'm saying is there's still a very high possibility that Lamar Jackson could trail off. We are watching a guy who is skyrocketed. I'm saying I think he could trail off this week. I think he could very well have an awful game against Clemson, and then no one is talking about that guy for Heisman ever again. He takes one bad game and he's done. I also think, Graham, it's a little absurd to consider Dalvin back in the Heisman race.
Yeah.
We don't look like a good team right now, and Dalvin's not winning that race if we're not a good team. I mean, we get to Clemson and beat them, and he's averaging 150 a game, then I'd consider it, but I think it's way too soon to put him back in the conversation.
All right, we need to get moving on, guys. We are running very long on that Heisman talk, so I'm going to move us along. As it was all just discussed, there's going to be a lot more to talk about after that Louisville Clemson game with this. We're going to lump in most disappointing and most impressive teams. Make it quick. Graham, go ahead.
My most disappointing team was Florida. To have that kind of lead against Tennessee, where you went into the game knowing that you could win the game, having 11 straight. I mean, Tennessee didn't know if they could. Florida knew they could, even if they didn't have the players and the talent that Tennessee did. To just lose that game like that, that's very disappointing.
All right, Sirio.
Although I do want to say Florida as well, just to switch it up. Notre Dame. Go Irish.
Doobie, what do you got?
I've got Texas. I embarrassed myself by picking them to make the playoff in our last podcast, and then they went out and lost to Cal. I'm done.
For me, it's easy. It's my team. It's my second team after Florida State, and that's the UGA Bulldogs, who squeaked out a win over a crappy team, an awful FCS team last week, and then this week just got absolutely embarrassed in every way. It made me sad. It made my heart hurt a little, especially after watching FSU get blown out last week and then UGA this week. It was a pretty bad back-to-back for me, so that's definitely my most disappointing. We're going to skip
honorable mention LSU.
Can I just say one thing about most impressive really quick?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Ole Miss. The fact that they played this hard schedule this fast into a season, I thought that they expended all their energy blowing the leads that they had against Florida State and Alabama. The fact that they went out and whooped up on Georgia is incredible. That's a good team, and I can't fathom how Florida State beat them with the way we're playing.
I second that.
And just to add something a little different, I think Wisconsin was the most impressive, especially with LSU losing and becoming non-ranked. For them to go on the road and beat a Michigan State team that was in the top 5, I think is pretty huge to actually solidify that they're for real this year.
All right, moving on to my very favorite topic, and it is the reverse Heisman. Graham, who's your reverse Heisman this week?
I had a tough time coming up with this, but I put Leonard Fournette. Last year he was such a good player, so explosive, came down to the Heisman race, and this year he's just been pretty much nothing. And for the fact that if he's not explosive and he's not having a good game means that LSU loses and they're not ranked anymore, I think he's a pretty clear candidate.
Serial.
Deshaun Kaiser. That's all I'm going to say.
No comments necessary. Doobie, what do you
I don't
got?
want to say anything.
I've got Eason. I think that should be on Kirby Smart, or as I like to call him, Kirby Fart. Boom. That he shouldn't be playing this soon. I don't know why Grayson Allen is not their quarterback. It doesn't make any sense to me. But Eason has not looked good. He barely got above 50% completion rate. He does not look like a 5-star quarterback. And I do not understand why he's in the game. He's my reverse Heisman. He should go to the bench.
To quickly add on that, I think it was pretty awful of Kirby Smart after the game to basically say Eason has to play better. It's pretty much Eason's fault that we lost when you've got Grayson Lambert sitting on the bench who's a fifth-year senior who's done it before, who can win games that you can't put into the game to at least try to salvage that. I think that's pretty awful of your first-year head coach to throw your true freshman in and blame him.
To piggyback on that, Brian Kelly did a Brian Kelly and blamed his entire team for the loss against Duke instead of blaming himself as a coach. That guy, he's quickly rising in the ranks. He's sniffing Brett Bielema's asshole for me. He's getting there.
Yeah, I actually was going to go off the wall and choose him as my reverse Heisman this week. I think the quote was there were two quotes, and one was coaching had nothing to do with that result, and the other was this loss is all on the players. I've never heard a coach come out and say something like that. I heard a college head football coach and be responsible for making these players grow and helping them learn and grow as players and men, to say that it is all on the players that you lost a game it's a joke.
Yeah. Cowherd was saying, like, everyone criticizing Brian Kelly is a great coach. USC would take him in a second. LSU would take him in a second. I think they'd be dumb to do that. That guy is not a player's coach. I think he's an NFL coach, not a college coach.
All right, we're going to move it on again. I did want to bring this up just really briefly, and not much discussion needed, but I'm interested to see if anyone ever schedules North Dakota State again. We talked about it before the Iowa-North Dakota State game a few weeks ago. We didn't get to talk about it after yet. But just an awful scheduling job by Iowa. They're clearly not that great anyway, but bringing in a team like that, there's just no upside to it, and there's so much possible downside. I'd be curious to see if that kind of scheduling faux pas happens again anytime soon.
Can I go first? I think that with Wentz and the success that he's having, if teams see that this guy can still hang with the top-level professionals in the world, as long as he does well, teams are going to shit their pants. They should schedule Florida State over North Dakota State.
I kind of have a different take on it. Is yes, teams are going to schedule them because I think the NCAA is going to force them to go up to the FBS. This might sound like a wild card, but if I'm the Big 12, I am not shying away from looking at North Dakota State as an addition to that conference. I know that sounds insane, but they've got really good facilities. They've got an incredible fan base. They're not that insanely far as geography goes. I know it's not a big market, which is the only thing they have against them. But as far as the team goes, I'd take them over any other team that they're considering now besides Houston.
If it was about football, I would agree, but you hit it on the head with the market. I mean, the decision is going to come down to the biggest market they can bring in.
Yeah, that's a good point. They got to consider all sports.
I just think that's interesting, but they're going to be up. They're going to be in the FBS, so yes, they'll be scheduled because they're going to come up pretty soon.
Graham, any comment?
I thought it was hilarious.
Fair enough. All right.
10 out of 10 would watch again.
We're on to our last topic on the night, and that's just some big matchups coming. This week we have 3 top 10 matchups. I doubt that's ever happened. I think I saw something that said it had never happened, but haven't exactly fact-checked that. We got Stanford, Washington, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Louisville, Clemson in that order on the day. All top 10 matchups. What are y'all's thoughts on those? Graham, start us off.
So the Stanford-Washington game, I've got Stanford winning it. I've still got Stanford in my Final Four. I think it was really important last week that they were able to beat UCLA on the road without McCaffrey having a big explosive game. He still had over 100 yards, but they were able to get it done without him, and I think that shows a lot for the team that they're able to win without their Heisman candidate, and I think that'll show a lot going into Friday night. Are we just doing that game, or are we doing all four?
Whatever you want to talk about, those four.
Okay. And then of the others, I've got the Wisconsin-Michigan game. I think Jabril Peppers, who Sirio mentioned earlier in the Heisman talk, is definitely going to pose a challenge for the freshman quarterback for Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin definitely looked legit last week, but I still think Michigan's going to end up taking the Big Ten.
Where is that game? Where is the Wisconsin-Michigan game?
That's in Michigan.
That's in Michigan. Okay. So starting off, Stanford, Washington. I'm taking Stanford. Although I don't have them in the Final Four, I do think they finish in the top 8 or so. And I have McCaffrey as well, like I said, in the Heisman race. Michigan to win. Agree with Graham on what he said about Peppers. I think he's the difference maker throughout the season and in this game. Tennessee is who I'm going to take with Georgia. I'm sorry, Palmer. I'll let you just blast me for how dumb I am in a second, so I won't say too much. And then I know I said it for Louisville, Houston, but I also want to say it for Louisville, Clemson. Whichever quarterback comes out and shines in this game, I think has to be the front runner because this is a true – I don't know why that's so crazy. I think this is a true –
I said those exact words. I said those exact words in the Heisman conversation.
Yeah, but then you said that Lamar Jackson is a boom or bust.
I said both of those things. You are correct.
Those are not exclusive.
And we lost. Oh, no, he's back. Okay.
I'm just on low battery mode.
Anyway, Siri, any more on those 4 games?
No, that's it. I just want to hear what you have to say about UGA.
All right, Doobie, what do you got on those 4?
Going against you guys, I think Washington beat Stanford. That game's in Washington, arguably, the biggest game for their program in the past 10 years. I don't think Stanford does well in games like this when they have to handle an explosive young offense. That defense is much better than people are getting credit for. As long as they can stack the box and hold McCaffrey down, I think that those DBs can handle that quarterback very easily for Stanford. So I've got Washington winning that and becoming a title contender. Wisconsin, Michigan, I don't really care. Either one of them can win. It makes no difference to me because Ohio State is going to win the Big Ten. Tennessee, Georgia, another one I couldn't give a shit less about. I think Tennessee's going to steamroll them, but I really don't care. I don't even know why that's considered a big game right now. That's only, I think, because Palmer has a UGA affiliation, because that's not a big game to me. That's the same as UNC, FSU, or any other mid-range game in the week. And then the final one, Louisville, Clemson, I think this is the deciding game of the college football season. I think what happens in this one completely changes the track. I think as much as Louisville fans will be cheering for Louisville, Houston fans will be cheering for Louisville, this is such a big game, and I think that Clemson comes and ruins that dream and brings the boom to Louisville. I don't think they're going to blow them out, but I think they're just going to show what happens when a team has more talent and is coached properly to beat the team they are playing. Unlike what Florida State did against Louisville, I think that Clemson team has experience. They're going to come out and they're going to show that they are still one of the best teams in the country. Like I said, I think Deshaun Watson becomes the leading candidate for the Heisman Trophy. That being said, I am really looking forward to that game because if Louisville wins that, I don't think they're losing.
Is that game day?
Yes. Yeah, it's game day.
Sorry, just to add on to that really quick. I picked Clemson to win that game, and I know it's not the same offense and it's definitely not the same caliber, but Clemson did a really terrific job bottling up the option of Georgia Tech last week. Not that that's necessarily going to transfer completely over to playing Louisville, but I think that was Florida State's biggest problem, was having to, take a look at the option, who's got the ball, and I think Clemson's going to be able to overcome that and win that game for sure.
Yeah, a point I want to bring up about that game, Florida State-Louisville, is that Lamar Jackson, I could be very wrong about this, but I don't think he completed a pass that traveled over 20 yards in the air against Florida State. If he did,
unless they were wide open.
It wasn't like a big game changer. He looked awful. Even when the ball was going past 15 yards in the air, his arm did not look good. Like, this kid, he's dynamic. I love what he's doing, but everyone who's comparing him to Michael Vick, including Michael Vick, blows my damn mind, because Michael Vick could throw it out of the stadium from his knees. This kid does not have the same arm. He can run and throw intermediate passes, but I do not think that he's going to be able to beat Clemson by just doing those two things.
So that, if you're right about that stat, which I have no idea if you are, that makes it even crazier that they had double-digit plays of 40-plus yards. So if he never threw the ball that far, that's just nuts.
Yeah, he may have. I may
The
have just
receivers
been
were
too
wide open.
depressed.
If he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he fit the ball into any tight spaces. The tightest space he fit the ball was when it bounced off our receiver's legs, and then a guy caught it between his legs, bounced it into his hands, and ran for a touchdown. I mean, he was not throwing the ball well. He didn't look good. He's just a great runner, and FSU was poorly coached. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when they play a well-coached team. If I'm wrong and they beat Clemson, this team is the scariest team I've seen in college football in a long time.
Are you getting Lamar Jackson's face tattooed on your ass?
No, I'm not going that far because I think it's actually possible.
If they beat Clemson and then lose to Houston, would you still give Lamar Jackson Heisman running, not favorite? But.
Yeah, he should be at the ceremony, but I think you'd have to see what Greg Ward was doing. If Greg Ward had a good season, then you may have to give it to him. But I still think, like I said, J.T. Barrett is going to win the Heisman because he's going to have as good as stats.
But even if he loses to Houston, he's still going to win the ACC just by beating Florida State and Clemson. So he's got to be.
He's still probably in the playoff.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Lamar Jackson, if he continues, not even the pace he's on his numbers, but close to it, if he's in the playoff with those numbers, I think he wins.
Oh, 100%. That's without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Okay, so on to my little comments on these games. Number one, Tennessee UGA is on that list because if you can read Doobie, the agenda says ranked matchups, and that is a ranked matchup. Therefore, it is on the list.
UGA is still ranked?
Yes, they are.
Oh, man, then I'm sorry. I blamed you. I meant to blame the AP pollers.
There you go.
Because they're a bunch of fucking idiots.
No, but yeah, so that's a ranked matchup at Georgia. I'm gonna go Stanford over Washington. I think Washington got a little exposed against what I don't think is a very good Arizona team. Went to overtime against Arizona. Were able to win, but I don't think Arizona is very good at all. I think that put me down a little bit on Washington. I'm sticking with Wisconsin. I picked them over Michigan State, and I had no doubts about that game. I have way more doubts picking them over Michigan, but I'm still doing it. Their defense is just fantastic, and their offense looked like they started to click a little bit with the quarterback change they made. Louisville Clemson, I'm struggling with this. If it's a straight-up pick, I'm probably going Clemson at home, but maybe that's just like the small part of me that wants FSU to still be in the race for the ACC, even though I know we're not good enough anyway. But I can't wait to see what this is. I haven't seen the spread line on that, but I can't wait to see what it is.
3.5 Clemson.
3.5 Clemson is the early?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what it is by Wednesday. I bet it moves a little more close to 0 by then. I can see it moving to about 1.5, 2.
It's been moving towards Clemson. It started out at minus 1.5 Louisville when the early odds came out before the games this week. And then, I mean, I don't think either of those games really impacted the line, but yeah, Clemson has actually been rising. I would agree. I think it will end at about 3. I think it's going to end at about 4.
What's crazy about that to me with Louisville getting the early thing is that that's at Clemson, meaning on a neutral field, Vegas would favor Louisville by 4.5 points when that initial line came out. That's kind of nuts to me.
Yeah, I think but can you blame Vegas? I mean, they're just looking at what happened so far, and the last game they came out, and we were looking at them saying, Florida State should win this game. They went and blew them out. So although none of us believe it's going to happen, Vegas at least has to hedge their bets a little bit.
Yeah, it's very true. All right, any closing comments before we end up the night here?
Really quick.
Go Trump. Go Trump.
Really quick, I know this is we have a few really good matchups, those 3. Beyond that, it's a really terrible week of college football, though. There's not a lot of good matchups beyond that. I think it's going to be very interesting, though. Out west, after 9 p.m., you have 3 games that could really determine coaching jobs. You have Arizona State, USC. If USC loses that, I think Helton's out that fast.
And ASU is not defeated right now, too.
Yeah, you have Washington State, Oregon. If Washington State beats Oregon, you're going to see Helfrich get on the hot seat there, and you're going to see Les Miles, like you said, Graham, get a lot of attention for that job. And then you go down to Arizona, UCLA. As you mentioned, Arizona looked pretty good against Washington. If they beat UCLA in the Rose Bowl, I think Mora's gone.
Hey, Graham, where do you think Les Miles is most likely to end up?
I think he could end up being the head coach for the Orlando Magic, actually.
Why do I have a feeling they've been texting about that conversation?
No, we literally haven't. If I'm going to add one more thing, I think Oklahoma rebounds and beats TCU in an upset this week.
Is TCU favored?
TCU's ranked, and they're at home. They're favored.
That's man. The
TCU's
AP
ranked? What is
17 or 18?
That's nuts. All right. Well, I'm gonna agree with you there. I'm taking Oklahoma by far on that one. Any more
agree.
closing comments before you end it for the night?
The non-existent Kobe Fleener for the first 2 weeks of NFL fantasy season just scored a touchdown on the Falcons. But somebody scoring a touchdown on the Falcons is not a big deal.
And then I think we'd be remiss not to say this. Rest in peace, Arnold Palmer and Jose Fernandez.
Absolutely. All right. Hope everyone has a good night and good week, and we will catch y'all hopefully next week on Monday.